to our beloved viewer, wherever you are following us, on whichever platform you are following us. We appreciate your time. It is a good morning in Kampala. Kampala today, at least, the temperatures are not that bad, but not the best for some people, because we have gone to up to 20 degrees, and it will be so for a few hours until it will go up to about 25. Then it will go back down to 20 and 19, and that's according to the predictions for weather today, and we believe that is the right timings that we'll be having in Kampala along the day. Today is a good Friday. I mean, a good time for the Pan-African Friday, where we come to you again with programs and discussions and issues of the African continent. And today specifically, we'll be looking at the Africans. Who is an African? Am I an African because I'm in Africa? Am I an African because my parents happen to be Africans? Am I an African because I'm black? So who is an African when we're looking at the African context? Who apparently, again, is the African when it comes to the citizens of Africa? Of course, we have citizens, but also have the people of Africa. So these are some of the issues that we shall be looking at today, together with my colleagues, Sister Tagali. Today she's back in the house. I'm told last week, I think she was around the country, running around the country, and she'll tell us what she collected as she was going across this country, but also with the Pan-African gentleman, Ndugu Rugarama. So we'll be looking at this, and if time allows, we'll also have other people who will be connecting with us from other areas of the world via the system. So it will be a rich discussion, but also if you can have comments, you can also send to us those comments following the number which will be displayed shortly on the screen, and you don't have to call, but you can send us comments via WhatsApp, and we usually take those comments seriously for the enrichment of this program, but also for further references and further studies of the issues that affect the African people. As usual, before we start off, we'll normally look at what the week has been. And for me, before my colleagues come in, I've been looking at a number of issues on the continent, which we shall share. And one of the issues that outside of the continent was what was happening because the name has now turned from Turkey to Turkey, something like that. And we have seen contractors being killed. I've seen the ministers being cut off their ears. Oh, it has been traumatizing in that context. But before I discuss what my week has been, I'll allow my colleagues, the panelists who are with me in the studio today, to begin giving us their view on how the week in the African perspective and their lives has been. I'll begin with the Sister Tagali to give us her views, because she has been the one moving out of Kampala and trotting the country. She must be having a lot to share with us. Rachel.
Well, I want to say hello to everyone who's tuned in at this time. I think in my up-country travels, I have noted that the rains are on. I think that is true of most parts of the country. I'm not aware of any part that is not has not noted that change in weather. But I think it's also a very welcome thing. Because we suffered intense heat. Some people were even distressed by issues of hunger and so on and so forth. So I think that is a very welcome development at this time. Away from that particular situation, locally, there have been some interesting issues related to public accountability. And I think for me, the more notable ones was the admission by the Ministry of Health that much of the money that was sent to regional referral hospitals in particular for COVID-related matters is yet to be accounted for.
Don't traumatize me again with what was happening in Turkey.
Well, the Permanent Secretary is on record saying repeated efforts to get these accounting officers to do the needful has so far yielded limited results. But that is also in consonance with a number of unsettling developments along those very lines. We know that the IGG has declared that she's on the track of those who are said to have used public resources in a very questionable fashion. We know that these materials were meant for some of the least among us, in Karamoja in particular. So the IGG says they have sharpened their focus on those public figures. Along those same lines, the President, of course, yesterday afternoon, he highlighted the need to propel Uganda forward through the PDM model and EMYOGA, and he cautioned whoever is intent on putting their hands into that particular public till. So issues of accountability, I think, have been front and center of the Ugandan political space this particular week. But as you know, there are always many things going on as far away as thousands of kilometers from here. We know that not long ago, the President was in Algeria, where he went, among other things, to strengthen trade ties. Algeria in particular, I think, has demonstrated and shown willingness to absorb Ugandan surplus in terms of milk. And I think the President is keen to pursue that particular avenue. But also, Ndugu Mututa, talking matters milk, I was relieved to find out the other day that the Kenyan government reversed its decision to ban imports of milk into that country. It was widely understood around here that was, excuse me, that was meant to stop the flow of Ugandan milk into the Kenyan market. But thankfully, that decision has been stayed. But I think it says how much further we have to go before non-tariff barriers are meaningfully leveled in this region and across this continent.
Sure, that's true. Because when I was looking at that letter, and the letter they were saying that actually the government of Kenya didn't ban the importation of milk from Uganda, because they were saying the importation of the trade between Uganda and Kenya does not refer to importation. Importation is for products that are coming from outside of the East African continent. But like you said, when politics is at play,
not only that, but I think because the sensitivities are very raw. We know for a while how Ugandan exports of milk, eggs, chicken, and some other products were stopped from going the other way, and Kenya was also saying some of its products were stopped from coming this way. So it's understandable why the milk industry in this country is jittery whenever Kenya talks about a ban. Whether they're banning things from Finland or the moon, people in Uganda worry.
Yeah, because this chicken milk politics sometimes has to be stopped finally. I think when we get the infrastructure, the systems at the regional level that will be able to, because Kenya is raising concerns of safety. But I'm sure most of these products they are questioning, whose safety they are questioning, are the same products that have passed through the Bureau of Standards in Uganda. So I think, and of course, like it was raised that when they were talking about aflatoxins, it was found to be that actually the Kenyan maize had more aflatoxins than Uganda. But of course, the Chirechito Alamunaku, sometimes you can not sit down to say which one has more, because each particular country has its own standards. But I think finally when we get the regional, the East African standards, that the food which is consumed in Kenya or Rwanda or Sudan, it has the same standards, the medicines. This is going to help, I think, qualifying standards across the region. But for now, we still have this hide and seek. When I get annoyed, I cross the border. When I get annoyed, I stop your
Because
product.
Uganda had also said they were also banning import of powder milk. So within days, the Kenyan authorities reversed their decision. I don't know if those were related. But I think also along those same lines, this very week, the Kenyan authorities said they were cracking down on entry through these porous border points.
Yeah, that's true.
But the focus was mainly, I think, in the Busia, probably Malaba area. But the Kenya border with Uganda is much bigger, all the way to the northern tip. So I don't know how they will man all the way through Karamoja, almost to Sudan.
Entry of human beings.
Yes.
But the easiest way to flatten borders is to standardize. If a kilo of sugar in Uganda is 5,000, and the same kilo of sugar in Kenya is 5,000, then where's the problem? No one is going to smuggle from one place. This is also happening down here between Malawi, Zimbabwe, Tanzania. All these things are happening. But like we talked last time, it is the devil lies in the borders. That someone has said. Last time there was a man, I was hearing a story of a man who has a family in Kenya and has another family in Uganda. So they were packing rice from Kenya to come and have they're having I think an introduction of one of the daughters in Uganda. So when they were crossing the border, they were impounded as smuggling. And indeed, they were smuggling because goods were leaving one country into another country. But when you come down to it, say, really, this man is moving from family A to family B, moving food from this to this. So where's the problem? But like we're saying, the problem is not that the administration is stopping the trading. The problem lies in the borders. Until the issue of the border issues are addressed, we shall still be talking these things until cows and chickens come back home. Ndugu Garama.
Thank you so much, Comrade Mtuta. Good morning, Sister Takari. And good morning to you, our dear viewers. The week floods in Kampala. I have been horrified by the amount of water when it rains, particularly in Kampala. It tells me that we have got a much bigger problem than probably I earlier on thought. I cannot get a sufficient explanation as to why even the new roads, seemingly new roads and channels that have been worked on up to now, keep flooding. We have seen motorcycles being swept under those channels. And at one time, I haven't seen a repeat, I wouldn't want to. At one time, there was a lady who was walking along those channels, and she just fell in the manhole, which was open. They are around Bwaise and other areas where water has entered in people's business centers and residences. There are captions of young children swimming in the living rooms of their houses. Now, this one is a very disturbing scenario. I surely don't know whether we are going to keep getting money from Japan, European Union, China, for purposes of managing our drainage system. I don't know how long it is going to take us as a government to manage our environment, to realize that it is not fashionable for the planners of this city and the political leaders to rain on people who are going into the wetlands, drying up the wetlands and constructing there. Because when the water will always find its level. And I think that's what is happening. But in addition to that, what is also worrying, of course, there is talk that there was too much heat. Now we have gotten a relief that it has rained. The only beauty is that it rains in the country, and the opening up the gardens can go ahead, which is a plus. But you see, on the African continent, largely speaking, where we have got well over 60 or 65% of our land arable, that we can cultivate anything we want to cultivate. I don't think the issue of seasons really should be such a big issue as far as we are concerned. Although we have got some areas which are desert-like, but the late Comrade Gaddafi showed us that even areas which are in a desert form can be turned into a green belt and agriculture takes place.
Sure.
But the issue of flooding in Kampala is a matter of urgency for the planners. We must stop this menace. I have also realized that the roads, you know, sometimes when the roads are, the weather is a bit dry, you may not feel the impact of the bad road. But driving on the roads in Kampala tells you, unfortunately, that we actually don't have roads in Kampala. Every part you pass, you will find that you are either splashing water on people, however careful a driver you may be. We have got pedestrians, we have got border riders, those who are carried on the borders. I can assure you it is a menace. Something must be done as far as our roads are concerned. They must be fixed. I even wonder, a road that is hardly 2 years is already completely torn apart.
Of course, the water's washed.
Whereas we have roads which were made during the times of Kwame Nkrumah in Accra, and they are still existing. Where is the problem?
Now,
anyway,
talking about the issue of flooding, I think in Kampala specifically, for me, I find that even hard to believe that up to today, we cannot come up with a plan that can definitely, or apparently many roads are being constructed, we're having flyovers, but the issue of flooding has to be addressed. And I'm sure it is not a rocket science that you have to undergo to be able to do the control
the other
the
time
flooding.
our mayor, Ndugu Mtuta, was telling us that a kilometer of road around the Kampala metropolitan, they use, is it 16 billion shillings? Something like that. And then the argument was like, who uses that kind of money? I mean, this story is unique to Uganda. For a kilometer of a road. Some time back, I was having a conversation with my engineer friends, and they were like, if that is true, then it is like what Comrade Lumumba calls it, routing at industrial scale. Anyway, that, I hope, has been said. Of course, it can be a topic of its own, and we get time and we discuss it. Probably we even call members from the Ministry of Works.
But is it limitation of?
KCCA.
Is it a limitation of knowledge? Is it because we are now
for the poor,
removing out the issue of money?
Since
the money is there anyway.
No, I think this is just simply lack of patriotism. Lack of patriotism, and at the same time, our societies have, because you are asking, and this is our topic today, who is an African? Now, an African, as we shall see, has given himself the description An African is that one who steals public funds. An African is somebody who is not a patriot, who doesn't love his or her country. An African is somebody who is globally abused by any other race, including himself. All this, I hope we are going to be talking about it and see. But originally, who was an African? Maybe that in the eyes of Cheikh Anta Diop, in the eyes of Dr. Clark, in the discoveries of Olduvai Gorge, who was an African? You see, but anyway, that notwithstanding, since it is our topic today, I want to venture outside. I also noted with gratitude the moving out of our patron and the President of the Republic of Uganda to Algeria. Is it not Algeria which was chasing away the Guinean? That was Tunisia. Okay. Yeah. But you see that entire, and the Pan-African credentials, by the way, of those countries, Algeria, Tunisia, Morocco, in those other years, was something the president, the band bearers of that time, was something to marvel about. But I'm glad that we have started getting, and I hope it materializes, because there is one thing of putting pen to paper and another thing of having ability, because I know for the fact that in Uganda we have got surplus milk and we have capacity even to produce more. We only need guidance. Sure. There is a lot of guidance from the, fortunately, we have got a young minister in the field of agriculture who himself is a farmer, our very own Honorable Frank Tumwebaze. We used to call him Munyeto, and I think he's still Munyeto youth.
Yeah, he's still Munyeto. He started as a Munyeto.
The days. So I'm optimistic that the agreements, the bilateral agreements have been signed, fit well within the framework of the Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and I wouldn't say regional groupings, because Algeria is the other far end and we are here. Yeah. So we are members of East Africa, they are members of the Maghreb region, but it speaks to the spirit of development and the desire to connect the continent. And I want to believe that such important endeavors that are taken by the head of state in this particular case of ours should be encouraged by the lower structures to enable the farmers to correct, say, milk. And I don't think it was only milk. There were other produce. Of
course, there are a number of things
which were also
together with those guys,
for which they put pen to paper. And if we can increase the production, and also, like Comrade Mtuta was saying, and we cut out the argument, because the truth of the matter is that majority of our people have got tendencies of greed and indiscipline. So you find, for instance, that some of the produce, the post-harvest handling is a problem. So the issue of afrotastics that we are talking about here are a consequence of not minding some of these processes. And sometimes when a country becomes strict and wants you to adhere to standards, acceptable standards, then we begin crying of political machinations and harassment. I think we need to up our act, and this boils down to leadership. So at the end of the day, what I noted in this week on the international scene is that, and of course the issue of Ukraine and NATO for that matter, and Russia with her colleagues is also ongoing. I see endeavors. Trump is building his campaign around the question of Russia and Ukraine, and he says immediately he gets into office, the issue of Ukraine will be no more, and Russia will be also safe.
I hope so.
I have seen sometimes some of these people.
I hope he comes back. But anyway.
Coming back is another thing.
Someone is talking from work, just saying it is pouring in Kampala. The rains are here. Thank God for the rains. And may our drains not let us down. Should they, may we learn to take responsibility for our careless handling of our waste disposal. For the record, the city authority, meaning Kampala City Authority, can only do so much. We can do better.
Okay, that's very good. So I wanted to conclude my week by saying that I want to believe that the tempo about homosexuality is gaining momentum in Parliament. I understand my brother and colleague in the legal fraternity, Honorable Comrade Basarirwa, is about, if he has not been banned on Twitter, is it Twitter? Yes, I think Twitter, because they complained that he's the mover of the anti-homosexuality bill, and they feel uncomfortable. So he came out and he addressed the press, and he brought it to the floor of Parliament. I think they have closed him from Twitter, and I think for us as people who are really guarding and protecting the African values, and we have got nothing to do with that terrible culture, we need to give our support.
So when they close you from Twitter, what happens?
Well, it is a platform where now our generation.
But at the same time, even before that, you can close it. People still have their potatoes anyway. But what I'm also saying,
Mr. Trump was banned.
Exactly, has he?
Has he died?
I mean, when I'm on your forum and have a following, am I the only person benefiting? You also benefiting. These are some of the things. I think we'll have time to look at these technologies and the politics.
Maybe we can say when they closed the Facebook here, because Uganda, by the way, up to now.
Officially.
But we are there. Now you see, some of these things are statements. We should not take them for the actual impact it creates, but like, for instance, at one time, South Africa suspended USA, majority of European countries from entering the country. Now you can argue that of what consequence is that in South Africa, for instance? No. First of all, it is a statement.
Yeah, because that, like and a number of times I've said this here. I said, can us Africans also one time say we are blacklisting someone from entering Africa? We said the president of the US will not be allowed in Africa. It may not be achievable, but you will have made
we can
a statement.
achieve it. He cannot just force himself to come here.
Yeah.
And even if he did, who is he going to talk to?
True.
So at the end of the day, some of these statements are very powerful. We are not saying that our colleague, is going to die because he has been...
but
that is if
at the same time, for me, yes. I have been following and making some arguments, even within myself. And I heard one person raised it also. This is, I think, Council Fox Odoi. In Uganda, we have the law, the penal code about this menace. But because when the penal code was made, there were a number of issues that were absent, issues of promotion, issues of NGOs, issues of soliciting support and arrest are not addressed. Now, the penal code has not been repealed. It still stands. Can't we just modify, because in our argument, the penal code, that law was not brought to us, was not actually started by Ugandans. It was put there by the whites when they were still here. So we could use their law. We improve with the other areas than bringing a new law. Because by bringing the new law, I think we are playing in the... You know, when the Bahati thing came up, all the Western capitals were up in arms, like they have touched them in the wrong place. But can't we improve this law without necessarily having to bring another law, even before repealing the other law legally? Are we not going to have an overlay, the legal overlay, over another law?
Ndugum Tuta and our dear viewers, what is actually happening is that our Uganda law reform is working on a number of laws that some had become a bit obsolete, and I think there are more than 100 something laws that are being worked on. Your argument that yes, we have got the the relevant law in as far as homosexuality is concerned, and probably there was no need of coming up with a bill such that we can pass it into law and criminalizing such acts. The truth of the matter is that there is where you find that a law is, the current law that you have on the books is so weak that it may not necessarily address the current trends of a crime being committed.
Review them.
It becomes very hard for the prosecution, and also presents a predicament to the bench, the judiciary, in handling a matter that has come before them. Even framing, by the way, the charges becomes a challenge. So, trust me, our parliament is gifted with very good brains. I know some who are good, and I want to believe that by the time, it was not out of excitement. You know, it was after studying what the current law we have in as far as homosexuality is concerned, vis-a-vis the kind of trends that are associated with the LGBTs or the homosexuality, as you like. From that, it informed their decision to come up with the kind of law that they have come up with. So I want to give credit to our parliament and all the other bodies, civil society organizations, the religious and otherwise, and people of goodwill, because we have seen almost everybody now coming on board. But by the time they came up with that and the support we are giving these people, is not because we are trying to get excited, trying to prove a point. The truth of the matter is that with the promotion, because historically, our viewers and my dear panelists, historically we have had this problem with us. And like in our culture, in the Wanyangore, we used to call such people Echtingwa when you would be a homosexual. And I want to believe there is an equivalent name elsewhere in other cultures, be it Igbo, be it in Kamba and what have you. But it was not something that was accepted. And as you can see, people would do it top secret. It would not, and it would not easily get out. But now we have got a very serious danger of promotion, that we are recruiting young children in schools and other centers. There has to be a law, therefore, to curb such a vice.
Yeah, but even then, I'm sorry, we're taking long on this issue. It's not a topic of discussion today, but I know it is something which is happening now, particularly in Uganda. But of course, I know other countries will also catch up with it as we move on. But even that one is also, to me, is problematic. The mere fact that we're even talking about it a lot, it is another quiet way of promoting it.
But there is no way, I really don't agree with that argument. And you're not the only one who says that. But how do you cure something that is never talked about?
That's what I was coming to him, that in Africa, this is not a new thing, and people shouldn't tell others that this thing is very foreign to Africans. It is not new, it is not foreign. The only thing is that Africa had a particular way of keeping it. But at the same time, again,
but
relating...
you no longer have that Africa that we are talking about. The Africa
and
then
also,
is not the Africa now.
But also the world then is not the world now.
Yes, but also
because
the other
even, like even before you go to that point, the penal code you've been talking about was not brought by Africans. At that time, even white men
never
thought it was repugnant.
Yes, new.
So it is in this generation that the white man is now pretending that what has been evil and wicked all this while is now good, palatable, and fashionable.
Because they've been visited by the devil. But,
but what we're saying is, I think adding to what he has said before, more than anything else, it's not that there have never been any laws. It's not that anybody has agreed to this situation before now. But I think it's an important rallying center. It's a place to actually check our commitment to some of the things that we hold dear. And Honorable Mong, to her credit, has actually tasked each and every MP who is attached to the Ugandan parliament to be present on Monday when this particular issue is visited afresh. And she has actually proposed that it will be by a show of hands, not by secret ballot. And there,
so that your constituent can see you.
and she says that those who do not pronounce themselves for everyone to see will actually be hearing from her or from the parliament that your particular representative is questionable and counter to the interests of Uganda. So it is, I think, remember the last time, the Bahati situation, when someone said there was no quorum, I think it was?
That's,
Yeah.
that's
The
the
idea-
technical ground upon which they...
I think the idea this time around is to show not just Uganda, but the rest of the world, that there is an abundance of quorum across the country, that this is not something anyone right-thinking wants in this country. Not just the parliament, but everyone who has, joined their voices to this particular argument to say that in Uganda, it is not just the president, it is not just Bahati, it is not just Basalirwa. Overwhelming numbers of Ugandans don't want this.
But I think this thing also needs to be, if people are saying that we need to be not only sensitive but also accommodative to the thinking and the behaviors, then why are African countries being not also accommodated by the way we think? When we were talking about some of the things just moments ago, one would say we are not being accommodative. But I think accommodation doesn't only...
It's two-way.
Yes, it has to be two-way. If I don't believe in what you believe, then you also have to accommodate me. And if I don't eat what you eat, you also have to accommodate me. But you also have my feelings and also your feelings. So there must be a middle line. If Basalirwa does not believe in what, believes in what he's doing, which actually many Africans and many Ugandans believe, then Twitter should also be sensitive to know that this is what other people believe. So who has the yardstick to say, now this is wrong, we have to switch you off because for you what you are saying is wrong?
Very good. Comrade Mututa, on that, just permit me share with our viewers that is the crux of the matter. What you are putting forward is actually the problem. And the problem is with the foreigner. The white man's arrogance has not just started today. It started then. You remember when they were packing our able-bodied people and taking them into slavery. Yes. Arrogance, to think that they were a better human being than the others. Two, they didn't stop there. When they so-called abolition of slave trade, and we know, of course, why they abolished it. It was not that they felt so much for the African man, but they were only changing after the Industrial Revolution, the tactics of moving forward the economy. They brought direct colonialism. 1884-85, they went to Berlin and partitioned Africa. Arrogance again. Whom did they consult? In there, they brought Christianity like they brought Islam. All those religious practices, they never considered it was full package, apply as delivered to you. They never accommodated any values of the African culture. Arrogance. When they left neocolonialism, with it, there are issues of have the policies as formulated by International Monetary IMF Fund and World Bank. And short of that, we are not listening to you. If it is devaluation, please, we have told you, devalue. If it is a import promotion vis-a-vis export promotion, please do that. Now, at what point, your question as whose yardstick? Exactly. It is simply the imperialistic yardstick that is applied, and it is one way. Take it or leave it.
Because I think even Ndugu Mututa, even before we leave that point, the point he has made about the arrogance of the white man. The white man to be fair to him, is consistent. He's arrogant when he's dealing with the Arabs. He's arrogant when he's dealing with the birds. He's arrogant when he's dealing with snakes. He's just arrogant. I think a case in point is the recent balloon incident. We've heard about it.
Yes.
When they were complaining that the Chinese have wandered into their airspace.
How
hypocritical. The very thing that the Chinaman was saying, the Chinaman said, look, I am surveying the weather condition. I'm taking a reading concerning environmental issues. But the white man did that in China in the 50s. They had what they called the U-2, and this was a spy plane. And at that time, there was a time when China, about the 60s, China developed the capacity to shoot this down. But whenever they would get a pilot, they would say, well, we're doing weather. They say, weather in my airspace. So why would it be wrong for China to pursue your airspace in 2023? And you did that in 1950.
They are still doing it, Sister Takari. That the reason as to why, you know this island, the
Taiwan.
one next Taiwan, they were fighting tooth and nail to maintain Taiwan's independence, when they very well know it is part and parcel of China under the One China policy.
And
it's
you know
because they want to make sure that they use it as a satellite state, like they have used other areas as satellite states, to monitor and curb the capacity, growing capacity and capabilities of China to counter any aggression.
Exactly.
I can hit you in your backyard. The same reason as to why they wanted so much to hang on to Hong Kong. The same reason as to why they so much wanted to hang on to Macau. You know? So this is the hypocrisy that we are talking
You're
about.
in America, why are you in Guam? And also in Guantanamo Bay, which is really Cuba.
The
Why are you there?
why they are Guantanamo Bay, exactly, which is so much part that it was sold to them. That is Cuba 101%. But they will claim that that one is part of why they want to make sure that they check on the prosperity and the growth of the Cubans.
So, viewer, we will be out shortly for a break, and when we come back from the break, we'll definitely go back to our topic today, who is an African? Are you an African because you are born in Africa? Are you an African because you are black? Or you are an African because you find yourself within the borders of the African continent? So don't go away. We shall be back shortly, and for those who are sending comments, the number is there. You can be able to communicate with us, and we shall be able to look at your comments, and some of them we shall be sharing them on air here. Thank you. Don't go away. We shall be back shortly.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're descending into Entebbe Airport. For those proceeding to Kampala City, the biggest event in East Africa is in town.
That's right, the East African Business Expo 2023 is happening from the 23rd to the 26th of March at Kololo Grounds. Join us to network, connect, and grow. Contact us for exhibition or sponsorship opportunities. The 14th East African Procurement Forum and Business Expo 2023 is hosted by PPDA.
Now sit back and relax. It's time to explore great business opportunities.
This is Chilling. Don't miss a brand new season of Chilling on UBC TV.
It's Freaky Friday from Airtel. Buy or gift. Buy or give.
Get freaky too! Dial *100 *10 hash to load a Freaky Friday bundle for you to enjoy the best offers on voice and data.
To buy a bundle for friends and family, dial *100 *10 hash. Freaky Friday with Airtel. Buy or gift a bundle today. Dial *100 *10 hash to get started. Airtel, the smartphone network.
When you talk about our motherland Uganda, the Pearl of Africa, you cannot fail to smile because of the smile that fills the faces of the citizens. Our nice good weather and nature that sustains us all, that enables us all to continue each in their own way because we are all different even according to each individual's work. But what joins us to become one person is the sweetness from the flavored drink Alleluia Jingati drink and Alleluia Tamarind drink. The flavor that quenches your thirst while at the same time treating and healing your body because it is 100% natural. Enjoy the drink that has got the tamarind juice in it. Made by Alleluia Reflexology, Healthy Solutions and Nutritional Research Center Limited. Get yourself a bottle of Alleluia from all shops around.
This weekend on UBC.
Arkwright City, located along Entebbe Road, is a modern city covering almost 2 square miles, which in the near future will hit a population of over 3,000 residents, businesses and other facilities. Dr. Anatoly Kamgisha is a family man who has forced his brand into the elite circles, becoming a true and undisputable authority in a sector that was not familiar with private developers. He took time off his busy schedule to talk to us about his dream, passion, and what keeps him motivated.
I believe so much in creating solutions society needs. When I imagine something and it comes, I feel I should implement it. And the way I've told you, I want to now start tackling the slums.
Of the day on UBC.
If I'm looking at issues of taxation and all that, I will definitely run for the Kateshumbas. Okay? Okay. If I'm looking at issues of investments and what, I would definitely run. I would definitely run for Dr. Emure Kugonza and Honorable Omara. Okay? If I'm looking at issues of the law, I will run for our very, very own people. I have the Oboso bosses, I have the cartoon tools, I have the Robin Arapojos. So everyone is talented in one way or another.
Did you mention cartoon too?
Okay. Yes.
Is he yours?
Yes, he is.
Yours as in NRM?
He is.
Was brought to you by
Gatawo with MTN Momo Advance. Momo Advance tops up your Momo to complete your transactions. Dial *165*5*3# to apply. MTN Momo Advance is always available when you need it.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We're descending into Entebbe Airport. For those proceeding to Kampala City, the biggest event in East Africa is in town.
That's right. The East African Business Expo 2023 is happening from the 23rd to the 26th of March at Kololo Grounds. Join us to network, connect, and grow. Contact us for exhibition or sponsorship opportunities. The 14th East African Procurement Forum and Business Expo 2023 is hosted by PPBA.
Now sit back and relax. It's time to explore great business opportunities.
Yeah, welcome back to the second segment of this program of Pan-African Friday, where we look at issues that affect us as the Africans, the people of Africa, and the residents of this continent. Of course, Africans are more than those who, for us who are living in Africa. When as we look at this program, we'll see that there are many people outside of Africa, many Africans who are living outside of Africa, a reasonable number indeed. So we're looking at who is an African. When you consider yourself an African, what does that mean? Do you even have a choice to be an African or not an African? Are you an African because you are born in Africa? Are you an African because you belong to Africa? Or what makes you to be an African? These are some of the issues that we're discussing today. And of course, you can also reach us on that number and give us your view of who do you think is an African and who do you feel should be an African. And here we have some comments from some people who have already sent us their information. One says, believe that Uganda is a part of Africa. However, Uganda's major problem is lack of patriotism, both by those in government and the opposition. The rampant corruption you see today is because of selfishness. Of course, talking about the Ugandan experience. And of course, definitely the issues of patriotism, like Ndugu Rugarama put it, is a big problem. I love your Pan-African Friday program, and be blessed. Is someone from within. Another person from Lubumbashi says, the problem of Africa is not that we don't have enough to cater for ourselves, but because we have a high appetite for begging. I like that we have a high appetite for begging. And I think that's definitely part of our problem as Africans. And there are many others that are still here and coming, and we shall look at them as we continue. So, who is an African? Last time we had a discussion here after the World Cup, and we were saying when you are looking at the African teams that performed well during the World Cup, you should consider France, because it is it's not our team, an African team, but it is a team of Africans. And then you also saying, what about people who are not living in Africa, but they are also Africans? Then the question was, who is an African? Are you an African because you're an African? So these are some of the issues that we would want to discuss today, and look at exactly what it means to be an African, and definitely who is an African. And Ndugu Rugarama, in your thinking, what do we mean? Who are we looking at when we say this person is an African?
Thank you so much, Comrade Mututa. Conventionally speaking, an African is that person who is found on the African continent. And like I said, conventionally, who is generally dark-skinned. But if you allow me a latitude to go a little bit deeper, in my opinion and observation, and when you look at the scholarly works of our senior and some departed colleagues, but whose works still live on and speak to us, the works of Comrade Sheikh Anta Diop, the works of the senior comrade Dr. Clark, mainly, and other worthy historians that have looked at who an African is, you will realize that we have got a number of Africans who are not on the African continent. We've got the so-called African Americans, for instance. We've got a number of African French people. We have got, even in Asia, we have got people who are dark-skinned and who history places and traces having migrated from the cradle land, which is Africa. And all those, therefore, are described or are known to be Africans.
Yeah, let me give you, because to your point, this extract also about who the African is. This one says people who are native to Africa, descendants of natives of Africa, or individuals who trace their ancestry to indigenous inhabitants of Africa.
More or less exactly what I'm talking about. I agree with that. Of course, but you see, there was a caption there, the Africaniste.
Yeah, something like that.
You see, it's not enough. That's the attitude which I was begging you to allow me. It's not enough to say I am dark-skinned, I live on the African continent, or I'm dark-skinned, I'm in America, and therefore that makes me an African. I think the deeper description of who an African has a lot to do with the values. And this is what we are talking about. For instance, we know a typical African and the values that make you an African. The values of that high-level discipline, community, togetherness, and respect of elders. You know, that's why, for instance, there are some African Americans, for purposes of this debate, who have come up to argue that they are not Africans. And one would be tempted to accept that, because the way of looking at issues, their perception of life is completely different from the African way of looking at issues. The adage in the African context of who an African is I am because we are, and we are because you are. In other words, your being is of great importance to me. But that is not what we find in other continents, largely speaking, especially Western Europe and America. Extremely selfish, and they do their thing as they please, including things which are not conventionally accepted. The reason as to why we have issues like homosexuality. And we say, it is my body, that's the argument, and I can do as I will. No, that is not living because other people are living. Now, the moment you get out of that togetherness, then you are no longer an African. But what is also of critical importance, who an African is, we must revisit the archaeological discoveries. The historicization of who an African is goes back to the strong man on the African continent who was a hunter, who was a defender, and who was a mother, who was a great father, but also who was a protector of society. Now, that is an African. That's who an African was. And at the same time, who respected cultural norms.
The values, yes.
The values that we are talking about. Now, the archaeological discoveries also tell you, we look at all the those that have ventured into discovering who an African was. Because I must, from the onset, present to our viewers and to our colleagues here that who an African is has undergone metamorphosis. An African pre-colonialism is not the African during colonialism. An African during colonialism is not the African after direct colonialism into neo-colonialism, which we are now. So we must be very careful in describing who an African is. And that's why I'm saying that the archaeological discoveries will tell you that this African was a strong-minded, bright person who constructed, among others, the pyramids, for instance, that up to now the science with which and the mathematics with which the pyramids were constructed still baffles those who claim to be at a higher level of thinking. that when you visit the old sites of Timbuktu University, for instance, in West Africa, which was arguably the first university in the world, you will discover that there were powerful Islamic writing which was constituting a larger body of knowledge, and therefore that mind of the African, and other caves which have been discovered with great paintings and writings. Now, all that described who an African was. That was then. But the African now, the African after the slave trade became weak during the slave trade because he was captured and taken into slavery for sugarcane plantations and others. So that African we are talking about, dark-skinned, strong man, was like Jaja of Apopo said, he who makes powder wins the war, is the weak African man that we are talking about.
Yeah, because in that category, you also have to add on now the African, of course, African Union uses the word diaspora. I personally sometimes feel uncomfortable with it. But you also now have that African who is the diaspora.
Yes, we have got a very huge component which our dear sister, Dr. Arkana Chihombori, was representing at the African Union as a diplomat, and they are scattered everywhere, although the voice has largely been the African American, but we have got them scattered in Europe, we have got them scattered, especially Western Europe. But when you look at the Haitians in Haiti, for instance, all that crop is historically placed to have migrated or to have come from African continent, and probably they were part of the crop of the slaves. When you look at the Caribbeans, where the great Marcus Garveys of this world came from, and you will realize that all that, for instance, was a part of Africa, or for that matter, is still part of Africa, if you like. And I think that is what the African Union describes as the diaspora. So I was saying, when the African whom we are trying to describe was captured during the slave trade, the kingdoms were broken down, others were merged, and kings were disposed.
Yes.
Strong men captured, women, beautiful women taken out, where we have got the byproducts in, for instance, Michelle Obama's and the rest. Very beautiful women we had here, we still have, and that's why the president was asking, why should anybody really develop weird ideas? With all these beautiful women around here, then you become a homosexual. You must be something. You have to check your brain. Now, going back to who that African is then, is that from there, after the death of the slave trade, if you like, because we can also argue that actually slave trade never stopped, but let's say for purposes of this debate that it did, then we got direct colonialism, where the African continent was divided into parcels and given to these masters.
On a Christmas.
Britain, it was a Christmas
gift.
bonanza. The British, the Germans, the French, the Belgians, the Spaniards, and we had that direct subjugation of the African continent. So the African man, therefore, also became a slave in his own continent.
Exactly.
He started speaking a language which was not his. He started practicing religious beliefs which were not his, and that is the African now that we are talking about.
Right.
Now, from there, we get the African after direct colonial rule leaves, and we get neo-colonialism, in which we are still living. Now, the person, the African that we are calling an African, is this person who does not make policy, even as a head of state. That's what we have. because the International Monetary Fund and the World Bank and other bigger governments, the big boys, will determine how a country is going to run economically, politically, and socially. That is the African we are talking about. The African, the man that we are talking about and woman, even in the diaspora, is the one that is subjected to all racial discrimination, like we are having the over 20 million people in America, the ones they call African American in America, who are subjected to racial discrimination and all forms of discrimination that come with the racial discrimination. That is the African that we are talking about. At the same time, we are talking about the African on the African continent who, like I said, largely the educated class does not speak his language, does not practice his religion, but at the same time also has been persuaded that certain sections within the African person are either superior and others are inferior, or for whatever reasons there are differences, and as a matter of fact, therefore, those differences must be expanded, and vengeance, murder, all sorts of killings must be practiced for purposes of giving the world the impression that the African man, the African person that whom you are asking is actually a savage who needs the grooming of a white man. That's the African person you are asking me to tell the viewers.
One is saying here, someone who, I'm talking about the African, saying someone who values the morals of Africans, preserves the African culture, and wish Africans at large well. Talking of an African. Rachel, who is an African?
That's a big one.
Really?
My own view is that Africanness is not physical. Africanness is really a spiritual thing. It's a thing that emanates in the mind. It's something that sits in one's reasoning, in one's speech, and the very last is the external aspect of Africanness. I have questions of my own.
Yeah, sure.
There are questions concerning people who are prominent in this day and age, and I think they relate very directly to what we are talking about, even if some of them may not have an African heritage, but still, they're good examples. If we talk about a man like Rishi Sunak, is that man an African?
Who is that?
He's Rishi Sunak,
Sunak,
the
yeah.
UK Premier.
The Kenyan.
His parents, I don't know whether they immigrated there. I don't know whether they were born in Kenya. They were in Kenya before they immigrated to the United Kingdom in the 60s, and the man was born in the UK. We know they were of Indian heritage, yes. I don't know, like I said, if they were born in Kenya, but the question becomes, is it because of the way you look that you're an African? And I have to say, that is not the case.
He doesn't speak African.
No, not only that. He was born in the UK. But by extension, would you call him an Indian? Why on earth would you call him an Indian? I don't know if this man has ever been to India. What I'm trying to say is that this issue of being an African is not strictly a question of where you were born. It's not even strictly a question of where you live. It is not strictly a question of genealogy. That is my own argument. You may have your own, but that is my own argument. For example, today, the man who is the United States Defense Secretary, Mr. Lloyd, General actually, Lloyd Austin, he's darker than all of us here. Is he an African? I don't think he has ever been to Africa. I know he doesn't speak any African language. In other words, just because you're dark does not make you an African, in my view. An African, it's a question of how you think. It's a question of how you do what you do. It's a question of how you reason even. Everything is filtered through that sieve. That is why the white man is very comfortable giving such a powerful office to a man who looks like you and me, because there is nothing within him that is like you and me.
Obama can be president of America.
That is why Obama, people had this great hope that he would bring a large US footprint to the African continent, that is uniquely his. But there is nothing African about Obama. So there was nothing he could do that varies from his predecessors who are white or those after him who are white, because within them, they're African they're American in every way, but in the way they appear. The mistake we have made, and actually there is, the mistake we've made until now, is to think that because someone sits in the geography of Africa, that makes him an African. That is why our Arab neighbors, they are not even brothers in many cases. That is why the president of Tunisia has the nerve to say those others who claim they're from Africa are trying to increase the numbers of people like them here on the African continent. They're trying to keep us from being Islamic and Arabic. This man is on the confines of the African continent, saying the people who come from further down Africa are keeping him from becoming a true Arab and a true member of this Islamic community. So what I'm trying to say is that geography does not necessarily make one an African. That is why people were struggling with the recently concluded contest in Qatar. They were saying, is Morocco African? Are Morocco Arabs? Is Egypt, are they Africans? So the question of who's an African is how someone who lives and breathes the African cause, who internalizes and externalizes what is good, wholesome, and proper concerning what is an African. It is not who looks darker than the other. There are people who are very dark, but they are totally white on the inside. They think Eurocentric, they support Eurocentric, they want to be white. In fact, some of them have spent a lot of time investing in very powerful skin-altering creams. You know this, Ndugu Mututa. I know you're not one of them, yours is natural. But people I wish I were. People like that are sitting in an African space, sitting in an African office, but they want to be something else. Now, that person cannot truly represent this ideal, which you ask, what is Africanness? And then there are also white people who spend a lot of time trying to get darker. Those ones are also there. They spend a lot of time on the tanning bed trying to forget they're white. That is why some people who look Caucasian, and they are in South Africa, are more African than some of us who are darker. Because they were born here, they have never been to anywhere else but Africa, they don't know anything else but Africa. That is really what should define the passion and the interest in causes that are captured by the term you talked about. In my view, the true African is one who espouses Ubuntu. The South Africans have said, because you are, I am. I'm thinking it is not so much, because there are some people, at least I went to school with some of them, they are definitely Ugandan in every sense, but they have gray eyes. There are some people. So being gray-eyed is not because someone came in contact with white man somewhere. Those are wonders of nature. But what we are trying to say is that the modern concept of who an African is goes far and above race. The issue of race is a colonial construct. You are not an African because you're dark. You are an African because your value system, because your mental approach, because the way you speak and the things that you espouse are really Ubuntu. When you're dark like me, and you are selfish to the core, and you live to take resources and to abuse your fellows, and to propagate the values of others, you should not be called an African.
Moses from Dokolo is asking, what do we do about this white man's arrogance? I think that's a question that we're asking to Ndugu Rugarama. But in the definition, again, when we go back to what the definition was saying, that you are an African because you descended from an African line, because you have a blood relationship with your forefathers or foremothers, like one said. Now, whether you eventually bleached yourself to look like a rock doesn't take away the fact that actually you are an African.
Then why aren't the whites of South Africa called Europeans?
No,
remember,
yes.
Then why aren't they called that?
That's why they even want their country.
No.
Let's ask Marema. Julius knows.
You don't have to hear what he will tell you.
He knows who
so,
they are.
so much so that now what you then later on do, because let me give you these statistics. We have about 20 countries outside of Africa where the Africans have a big share. I think I have some of them here. We have countries like in France, I think there is 7% of the African population, of their population.
Yes, still that low?
Yes.
But you can, like you said, I think what is a good beginning is to say African descent. That one we cannot take away from you. But to say someone is an African, it's a present day thing. It is not because of your ancestors of 300 years ago. You cannot be African in thought, word and deed when you've been removed 300 years. It is not possible.
Because actually even the other irony is that even if you are living, and I think for us Africans, either we are fortunate or fortunately unfortunate or unfortunately fortunate. Because you can have generations washed down from the first generations of people who were taken for slaves up to today, but still you can tell, even by mere looks, that after all this one is an African. Of course, we have the Maletos, the Obamas and others who have been able to be accepted in quotes in some of those societies. But even, you remember the famous remark that one made, a black man in a White House, you see, because you can't even be accepted in any quarters of society, even however rich, because we have many Africans who have gone out of Africa and are very rich, but still, because they are blacks, they are Africans, still have that stigma. What we are saying today is that an African will always be an African. The most important thing which we're advocating today now is to hold that value with you whenever you were as an African.
But it's impossible when you've been away 300 years. It's impossible.
Yes, because you
can talk African descent, but you can't say they're Africans. It's not possible.
Because
Rachel, we are even struggling with the ones who are here.
It can't be.
Who already just go for 2 years, master's degree,
that is why
bachelor's,
if you brought Obama,
even the ones who studied from here.
No, leave alone those who are even gone out there, those who have studied from there, those who are going, even those who are here.
That's why you're saying the one of Brazil. Please don't call him an African. He can't be.
We wouldn't be talking about these issues of homosexuality today if the African society was the African society of that time.
No, that's why we are saying.
But now we have to appreciate and accept that, of course, true, Africa has moved on.
And they are of descent, we agree.
Yes, they are Africans.
But to say they're Africans, it's not true.
But they're still Africans.
No, you have African descent. To say African is a present thing.
You cannot tell them they are not, because actually, when I tell Ndugu Garama, we are advocating that African Union should accept, and the African Union are saying as long as they should accept Haiti to be part of the African Union.
But that's
because
that's a wastage of time.
Exactly.
They themselves, by the way, have asked before. But anyway, let's just a little bit go back. Ndugu encourage me, Ndugu Mtuta.
No, I think she still had a point.
I agree entirely with from the intellectual point of view. I agree entirely with Sister Rachel's submission. I can assure you that we have people here on the African continent who have even never gone to Europe or America for that matter.
And will never go.
And will never go. You see, they have started from here, and we have a problem with that.
And they don't feel African.
And I can assure you, Rachel's passionate submission about some quarters of the society not being African is very true, to the extent that we have got practices, we have got people, and I can bet there are some parliamentarians who are not going to appear on Monday because they have been benefiting from the funds given to them by that group of people who do practice a culture which is entirely not ours.
Poverty. Yes.
Now, that is one. We have got some circles, members within the Pentecostal community who feel, and some have actually come out to express that feeling, that the homosexuality business should be left alone. We have got a generation of, quote unquote, these elites, the educated class, educated, I don't know what that means anyway, who will tell you, this is my body, I know what to do with it, and they will feel, some have actually, those I have interacted with in my Pan-African fight, that this Pan-African crusade of yours is not going to give us anything. I want to be as white as humanly possible. And that is where Rachel is picking a bone of contention. That why should we even think of people who profess nothing about African being referred to as Africans? But you see, the dilemma, when we come home, the reality is, the people in Haiti, for instance, yes, they are Africans, they are Haitians of the African descent. The African Americans, the blacks in USA, they are Africans,
the Caribbean,
or Americans of the people within those islands, a majority of them. I can assure you, we shall always refer to them as Africans. But when we come to the argument, the academic argument as to whether really in form and substance, in form yes, but in substance, do they breathe, do they practice? As long as somebody does not speak, because it's at the end of the day, what makes you, you? You see? Now look, before you read that message,
yeah, I was
look,
going to read.
There is, for instance, let's just bring it home here. And that's where I credit my brothers and sisters, the Waganda. They insist as much as humanly possible that a child, you are in Uganda, you must speak the language. They are struggling, of course, against big forces of imperialism, the global spillovers, but you can see they are still fighting tooth and nail. Be able to speak the language, be able to practice minimally some cultural things to do with Uganda, but at the end of the day, we have got an increasing population of people called Banyankore by name Biaranga. He can't even tell you the meaning of Biaranga. But if you ask Tumututa here, he will tell you, I was born here. The culturalization, the dilemma we have is that defining who an African is a hard paper.
Now, this one says, the heart, meaning the thinking, does not determine your origin. It just determines your character.
True. Descent.
You say all said and done, the truth is that we are our father's seed. Whether you look yellow, blue, blah, 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 your father's seed originated from, if your father originates from India, you are an Indian, but because you have a heart for others, that is why you can just be a support, but not that blood.
No, let me just say this. I have heard that comment. Let me just say this. You see, I again repeat, from an intellectual point of view, going down deep to analyze who an African is, and its aspirations and what we want the African man to be, or what he used to be before the interference of the white man, I will go with Rachel's submission. Unfortunately, when we come home, the way of looking at who an African is in the current form, whether you are here on the African continent or away, people are going to look at you, and we were having a discussion, you remember here with that sister of ours from London, you remember the one you brought, who was saying that, you see, We must call these things by these names, not because we believe them. I'm not going to refer to myself as white because I'm dark. Not because I believe I'm dark. There is nothing like that kind of expression. But for purposes of making my point and having certain benefits, I would refer to myself as black. Now, this is what it is. I will be born with a group of my sisters and brothers. If one becomes a stupid person, it does not take away the fact that he is my father's son.
Exactly. Now you hear this, because there's some Thomas from Entebbe is saying this. You are racializing this concept of Pan-Africanism. An African can become one by adoption, by adopting and practicing African ideals and values.
Nobody racialized anything. We said there are people who are here by geography, but in their thinking.
Rachel, first hear that argument. I will have a very serious issues with it.
No, for him he hasn't been following.
Yes.
Then you can be
by adoption
an
and practicing African values, you become an African.
No. That is his argument. But what we are saying, what I'm trying to say is, he's the one who's racializing something. We have said that someone being on the continent does not give them the thinking that is in tune with what should be
very true
at the heart of African thinking. We have this man, this is last week, when this man who was born here on the African continent, the president of Tunisia, he said those people will swell our population. They will keep us from becoming Arabs. They will keep us from becoming, those are not my words. He's the one who was being racist. But that aside.
No, even America, by the way. Do you know that America is having the white supremacists? I will borrow just 1 minute of yours. The white supremacists are consistently cutting down on the expansion of the black man, making sure that they do everything humanly possible to incarcerate the male rather. The rate of incarceration of the male in America is way over anywhere on the globe. Reason? They do not want to, because they know that the capacity, the propensity to increase the black population in America is very high. They must incarcerate the male, and the male who stays not in prison must be rendered economically impotent for you not to be able to procreate, reason being that the population must be, because the rate of increase, the fertility rate of an African man is so high. Now, what does that tell you? That the fear in other races against the white man is so huge that they must do everything policy and otherwise to curb the increase of the black man. Wherever the black man is.
I can give a testimony, an example on that. For example, you look at America and the countries that, the black countries now, we're talking about Haiti, we're talking about Cuba, that are neighboring America.
Yes.
But
just
America,
90 miles away
constantly
from,
interfering in these countries to render them useless, that they will not be able to progress by, you remember what happened in Haiti, including, in fact, now people are saying, the people who are saying the earthquake in Haiti was manufactured like that one of, of course, the scientific are not proven, and you know what is happening in Cuba. So Americans' policy...
But in Cuba, they will not succeed,
the policy is that to make, the point you are making, that to make these men who will not be in prison economically useless.
Yes.
But that aside, the issue, to help this gentleman who's talking about racializing this thing, you cannot be a true representative of your nationality or whatever when they take your language from you. You can't. The reason why America and Europe spent all the time making sure that our ancestors, who they took there, they made sure they lost their language.
Absolutely.
They made sure they lost their religion. They made sure they lost every aspect of their identity. Because you must consume every aspect of what makes someone different in order to forge a unified path.
It was a deliberate policy, by the way.
Of course it was deliberate.
Up to now.
Exactly.
Up to now.
So anybody who insists, like this man of Tunisia, who insists that they must retain their Arab link, cannot be an African. The one who insists they are more Islamic than anything else. That one, I'm not against Islam. What I'm trying to say is that it is these things that cause a nationality, that cause a race to be what it is. Because when someone takes these things from you, the foundation of your identity has been lost. So you will stay there looking like all these other people, but you can never be like them.
Yeah, because, for example, Brazil, the population of black people in Brazil is unofficially...
It's bigger than that of Uganda.
It's unofficially 78%. But official records say the population is 30%.
But can you communicate with that person? So
you can.
We are saying, like you said, these are things that we have to use to reawaken our outlook. This is a white man's text that says, an African means you're dark-skinned. Then they took that same African and whitewashed him totally and completely, filled him with whiteness, and said, now that one is your brother. How?
But Rachel, I'm sometimes very hesitant to say this, and sometimes I feel hurt when I see blacks trying to paint themselves to look white. And then you wonder, if you are talking about the African, is this person an African? And there was an interview I was watching, someone was being asked, are you an African? No, are you a black person? Say, no, I'm not black. Say, but you look black. Say, but you know, for me, outside I look black, but inside me, I'm a white person.
They are right.
You will hear those voices.
They are right, because this whole concept of who is an African, when you're of age, you choose. You choose it. We are not talking about African descent.
Actually,
we are talking about
choosing. Someone I think has said something about it. Said this choosing is now the mother of all problems, because there are men who have chosen to be women, and there are women who have chosen to be men. There are humans who have chosen to be animals. We now in the US we have this group. I think the rest of Europe also, the group of queers. You can decide to be a cat. I don't know.
But you even get the sense that that group, that for instance, my sister Rachel is trying to explain. And like I said, at the risk of repeating myself, truth be told, there are people who look like me, like you, like any of us here. But in actual sense, they are not us. Now,
and they don't want to be.
The problem is that my sister Rachel is going to chase almost 90%
of them,
of Africans, right from the African continent, because they do not think, they do not practice, they do not see the African content in them. When you examine, so let's,
no, we're not going to chase.
For purposes of this debate, let's agree that we have a huge family called the African continent. And in the African continent, we have got the Maghreb, for instance, and who will describe themselves as Arabs. And that a country like Morocco, full of Africans, is going to say for us we are more white-skinned and we have got nothing to do with Africa. I told you one time when I was in Casablanca with a colleague, the market women, the equivalent of Owino, they were asking us in simple English that they could master, how is Africa? And a colleague of mine and myself took it upon ourselves to educate them that they were also Africans, if they didn't know. Now, but we have got a head of state. Just recently, we were having a discussion here, and Rachel was leading it, that look, we have got a head of state in Tunisia who goes on national television and says that we cannot afford to have our darker-skinned people coming from the lower part of Africa.
They say coming from Africa, that's the word.
There you go. And they pose a risk, one,
of changing the composition.
Then also changing the demography. Now, when the demography is changed, we are going to lose our Arabness, if there is such a word.
Islamic credentials.
Now, that is dangerous. But we have them there on the African continent. It throws me back to my argument earlier on, that, all right, this we appreciate is the predicament. It is a big family comprising the Maghreb region, Central Africa, East Africa, West Africa, And you are bound to have the beautiful, the ugly, the foolish, but they are all there. Now, when we intellectualize this debate, certainly, and the intellectual that Rachel is, you are not going to drive her away from the fact that somebody who does not practice the African culture, African beliefs, speak the African language, is actually, and who even confesses not wanting to be an African, is actually an African. At the intellectual level, I will agree with Rachel. Certainly. Why should I force you to be what you are not? But at the end of the day, when we are having a conversation or debate of this nature, is that, all right, a big family as this, including those ones who didn't choose but found themselves away from the African continent.
Exactly, that was my point.
And
I was coming to. These people
they are also Africans, whatever their problems may be.
Are removed from us. They are taught, they are given new names. They are taught a new language. And they are told what to do. And of course, they became Smith Jones, Davidson.
Look at South Africa. We have got the Boers. They came, probably some didn't even choose, because their great-grandfathers came to South Africa.
At least for them they came.
And they claimed, at least for them they came. They were not forced. They were not forced there. Now they have. I don't think that they have ever wanted to be called Africans. They claim that they are Afrikaners, something like that. They even developed their own language, and that takes you back to what Sister Rachel was saying. That you see, you don't even speak my language. The people of this place speak this kind of language. You can even argue, because the Americans have argued, that here we speak English. But we also know the original inhabitants of America, they were not speaking the language which the Bushes of this world and the Obamas of that world and the Hillary Clintons and what have you speak. But because they came, by 1773, 76, around there, they declared what they declared, and they have said for them they are the originals, and they do not want to know that they are natives who were eliminated systematically. They have no voice. They will still claim that this is now America, and any person who is not white like us, if there is such a thing as white, is a foreigner and must be treated in a manner that will keep him in the check. And they have done that for so many years now.
Yes. Now, Rachel, this for you, Madam just said, poverty can drive you sell your own future, of the future of your offsprings. Should we go on selling our own country because of poverty that isn't permanent? Father can be poor, son can be rich.
It's a question. Of course not. And even before I return to that question, I want to restate what I was saying earlier. This is not a question of driving anyone from any place. It's not even a question of driving negative perceptions of anyone. But I think, Ndugu Mututa, my own understanding is that one of the things that we seek to do here is to restart the mental engines that have been overtaken by colonial overtones for years on end.
That's Pan-Africanism.
We seek to reset the balance concerning our own perceptions of ourselves, our own destiny, our own expressions. Why should they be filtered through the expressions of someone else developed for another cause?
Exactly.
So we need, as I said, to really to zoom in on some of the things that are defeating our cause as an African people. I wish to reiterate the fact that I am not taking away from the fact that people who are elsewhere are of African descent. But I still argue that you really cannot think and speak and have the same passions I do when you've been removed for all those years. It is difficult for me to be, I lived in America for 10 years.
Only 10, yeah.
Yeah, 10 years.
Yeah. Mm.
But I'm nowhere near being American. Because being an American is not the virtue of sitting in America. It is a virtue of, it is inculcated.
And for them,
it
they
is
have to
transmitted.
teach it. They have to teach
through
being American.
education, through folklore.
Exactly. Now, that is the point. And of course, what I'm saying here, I think Madam is right, because you don't just be an African because you are born in Africa. Now, this the other one who was saying they are the genetical Africans who are just born in other countries to claim to be part of those countries. But anyway, I think for him, he's saying that to be an African, you are genetically...
That's part of it.
Yes, you are related to the ancestry.
No, the genetics,
but
of course,
what you are saying also, Nduguru Garama, is that and someone from Abu Dhabi is saying that the arrogance, this is Moses Adier from Abu Dhabi, who is also saying, I'm watching from here, and he was talking something about the arrogance of the whites. To the extent that someone is taken away, but is constantly being told, passed down, that you are a black person, you are stupid, you don't understand,
and you must be of my values.
Exactly. So there are also people who have been subjected to that kind of treatment, and over time they have found, but at least there are those who still accept that much as we have gone through all of this, we are not you. We are still, and we have seen a few, however big they have been, still they have maintained their connections with the rest of Africa. But of course, some of them, after some time, they have completely gotten lost. I mean, just imagine if we have those here in Africa who can bleach themselves to look white. Now, imagine those who are living in the white community and have been whitewashed.
24/7.
Exactly, all this.
No, we have got comrades. We have got comrades. For instance, these powerful bodies like the Pan-African bodies, which have even built schools now. When you look at the likes of Dr. Umar Johnson and his drive, when you look at the entire cast, what our brothers gone now, the Elijah Muhammads of the then, the Malcolm X's of that time, the Boas of that time, the Marcus Garveys of then, when you look at the now, Louis Franklin and Farrakhan, rather, now still living. And you look at even our own brother, Brother Kaide Audo Obi, and what they stand for. You see, to be described less of an African, they will take offense. So, but really the point is, because for them, they see nothing, and they have not in any way subscribed to the norms, practices, and culture of the white man, because we know what the white man in America, for instance, stands for, and they are nowhere near there. So the argument really that we are having here is really, we are balancing a very delicate tilt here. And I can see the emotions that are coming from the audience, some saying we are racializing, and I can also, of course, appreciate the fact that when a population has been subjected, like now we have in America, the over 300 years now, yes, of the black man being subjected to...
More than 400.
Oh, we are talking about close 500 now. When we are talking about a situation whereby somebody has been... that's why even Malcolm X was X, you know. He said, you can't give me any name, I can't be a Smith, because I can't be who. For instance, if you found a Chinese being referred to as Smith, you would be like, really? You? But you look Chinese. So likewise, why should it not be strange for a black man to be called Daniel, or for that matter, Rachel, or Richard, or something like that? So it becomes very normal. And you will see this when you go to some of these so-called high-level workshops. They are going not to put Takari. No, they say it is hard to pronounce. You know, it's hard to pronounce.
Yeah, you can't we change?
You say Urguatoro. You say, no. You can't. What's the name? You say, no, let's go with the first name. And the Christian name must become the first name. So you see, the argument here is when somebody has taken away what makes you African.
Yeah.
Then it becomes very, and I think that's where Rocha is coming from. That she's standing there. She's saying, look, the moment you who says you are an African, your name is gone, your religious beliefs gone, your language gone, the entire African makeup in you is gone. Why should I intellectually stand and say that you are an African? That's the argument. But you see, it becomes a little bit difficult now when we are speaking to our masses. And you see that the other problem which I mentioned here, Comrade Mututa, and I beg to repeat it, is that the biggest problem we have is not the people who can't read and write. The primary ignorance is not the problem, because somebody can do it in Uganda, you may even know to Rumasaba or something, Runyankore or something like that, without necessarily having ever gone to school. The problem we have is the secondary ignorance. Somebody who has gone to school, even attained a bachelor's degree from a reputable university like Makerere or elsewhere, and his or her reasoning and application of what his reasons is a problem. You become a problem, not only, and by the way, what makes matters worse, that you have a problem with reasoning, but you don't know that there is a problem with your reasoning. That is the crop of people we have who have taken million attempts to make sure that they get out of the African shell and they become European or something else. They are fighting tooth and nail not to be African. And they have done systematically everything in their lives to make sure that they get out of the African shell. And some will argue.
Just hold there. Someone says here, Africans are also a problem themselves. They don't appreciate their color. You just imagine, find a beautiful, nice-looking woman bleaching her skin just because she wants to look like a white woman. This is Jacob from Waitebe.
Do you know why that is? You see, sometimes when we come here and we talk about the work, the subterranean ways through which a white man operates, then we are going to be blamed and branded to be heaping blame to the white man. But I can tell you that there are situations which are not shouting. There are situations which are shouting, but there are situations which are not shouting, which will make one, because look at when we hold the beauty contests. You see the beauty contests? Beauty contests, what is the yardstick?
But you know, this is the other thing I've been telling you guys here. Why should we blame these whites, wherever, all so much? Are they the ones who are buying for you cosmetics to, or guns to kill your brother?
No, they spend a lot of time.
In other words, they have been successfully brainwashing us to be able to do things which ordinarily we wouldn't do, or they can't force on us. But that we have accepted to do them even willingly, like one saying, this day is the devil no longer tempts people, it is people who are going to the devil. So we ourselves are taking ourselves into the devil.
You may not know.
This topic is not going to end. I can end with this one. Thank you. Said the Arab North is right to say they are not Africans. They can never be Africans, even if they practice African culture. What defines us Africans is mainly language, color, blah blah blah. So, Nduguru Garama, you can wind up because time.
Yeah, but you see, what is of interest here and what is interesting, even when we talk about language, is our brother there, as I assume the person who called the brother, is he aware that actually Arabic is the widely spoken language on the African continent?
Sure.
Is it? So meaning, and you cannot tell me that the Arabs are actually outnumber the dark-skinned Africans. So that one, the issue of the language, let's not, like you said, let's not go into, because we don't have sufficient time now to go into the nitty-gritties. The truth of the matter is that the African person has undergone a great metamorphosis. We have appreciated the fact that there was an African before the advent of slave trade. There was an African during slave trade. There was an African who is different during the colonial time. Then there was an African. Now there is an African now on the African continent and away during neo-colonialism. So in that sense, therefore, we must look at the African, who an African man or person is, juxtaposing in different circumstances and situations, the other one of the pre, now, and post.
Yeah. Rachel, your closing shot.
I think for me, it's always an opportunity to reset this software that was left us by the colonizers. We must vigorously engage our mental processes. We must vigorously examine the arguments that have been on the table, that have been steadfastly developed by people far and away from us, and who are not in any way at the center of where we need to be.
Well, thank you so much, colleagues, and thank you so much the viewer, whoever has been with us, and I also thank members of the public who have been able to send in the contributions here. We have not been able to go through all of them, but a lot of them will go through them, and maybe next time as we start the program, next Friday, we'll be responding to some of them. But we appreciate all your contributions. We know time has not been our friend. We are moving in for the next program. UBC has many programs that are coming on today. Please don't go away. We wish you the best, especially as we come into the weekend. Kampala is tricky when it rains. Please take care, and let's meet next week all alive. Thank you so much. Thank you, colleague panelists, and thank you all the production team behind the scenes and behind the cameras. Till Friday is when we shall meet. Have a lovely weekend. We thank you.